Okay, it is on now.
Great.
And I'm also going to,
grew quite substantially. When I came back to the States, I said that I would want to start.
uh-oh.
Losing them.
Yeah, I think you froze.
And it's just a wonderful concept to have people join in at tea presentations and gung fu tea ceremonies. And I thank Tea Drunk and Shannon for being my supplier and partner in what I do. Thank you.
All right, Seth, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm originally from Alaska, and I spent about 8 years living in Asia, where I started drinking a lot of tea when I lived in Fujian province. And I was traveling as a digital nomad, as a translator for about a year and a half, and drank a bunch of tea from a bunch of different countries in Asia while I was doing that.
Awesome. And you continue to travel right now, right? Sort of.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm trying to limit it because obviously it's not too safe, but I'm really looking forward to getting back on the road soon once all this stops. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me, our awesome panelists, and also our audience. Right now, we are trying it with Zoom webinar function, which we're broadcasting on Facebook Live right now. I think there's some problem broadcasting to YouTube, but we'll take a look at that later. Caroline, I actually didn't press the recording button until just now, so we missed your introduction. Would you like to repeat or would you like to proceed?
It's okay. We can proceed. I can share my screen so we can start talking about teas.
Great. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the picture of the teas on the screen. This way it's a little easier, just easier to see. So Carolina, you want to share your screen? I might have to click a button. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So would you like to put up your the pictures of the teas that you have?
Yes. So first, there's the blooming tea. I think you can see it, right? Can you see it?
Not yet.
No.
Right now we see the file.
Let's see. So here is the blooming tea. This picture is actually from Seth, but I also sent, you can see it now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I also sent you a blooming tea because I feel that the blooming tea is one of the favorite teas from like visually that are super, super attractive. But actually the first time I tried it, I felt that it didn't taste like anything. So I was like, well, maybe my bud, like I still don't have like enough bud taste like developed or something because I didn't really taste anything. And I actually really like how it looks on the cup. But flavor wise, I don't really understand what this tea is.
Right, so blooming teas is a, so basically it's like on the outside there's tea, on the inside is a flower. So Seth, you have a blooming tea that's being brewed, right?
I do, yeah, right here.
Yeah, so we can see that once the tea is brewed, it basically pops up. And sometimes there's a string that attach the flower with the tea. So you basically create this, kind of a tied down version of a blooming flower, or sometimes it's just floating around. So visually it's very appeasing. There's a reason why it doesn't taste a lot because there's not much tea in this particular package. So usually when in order for us to see the visual effect, you cannot use too much tea because then it's no longer look as pretty. And a lot of times this is a green tea based, and just like how you do not take a really good bottle of wine and make it sangria, you also do not take really good tea and then make it into flower tea or flavored tea. This is actually a completely different categories of tea from what we usually consider is tea that's made from just the tea leaf. And this is what we call the reprocessed tea. So basically you take the existing tea and you reprocess it into something else. It's literally would not, you know, if we're using wine as an analogy, this will be the equivalent of like a sangria. This was actually, supposedly, this was first made popular by demand in Japan. So Chinese producers, especially in the 90s, where there's still not a very strong domestic demand for things like this, and people start making these teas, and they were very popular with Japanese market, and it became really popular. That's also probably the time that it came to the States as well. Sometimes if you do have these teas, you can brew these teas with wine glass, and it just looks really pretty.
So I have a question, because when this tea was sold to me, the person who sold it to me told me right, and they developed during the Ming Dynasty. Is a lie, because you are saying that it became popular in the 90s, but I'm not sure if it also became or if it was also invented during the 90s.
Which dynasty you were saying?
The Ming Dynasty.
The Ming Dynasty.
Yes.
Well, at least the person has a dynasty that's about the dynasty that loose leaf tea started to come around. I mean, I haven't heard like such tea from Ming Dynasty. I mean, but usually for claims like this, I always say we can definitely ask the person who makes such claim to provide evidence, right? Instead of because it'll be much harder for a person to say it didn't happen to try to find evidence if it didn't happen. But a person who said it happened, there should be some kind of documentation about how it kind of happened. Yeah.
Okay, is there like a flower that is usually put into these blooming teas, or it can be any kind of flower? Or
actually, that's a very good question. I actually do not know the exact kind of flower that goes in there. It looks something like a chrysanthemum kind of flower, but like a much larger one. Mm-hmm. And because I'm not very familiar with the different kind of flowers, but it's not the typical flower that Chinese do have a tradition of putting into tea, such as like jasmine flower. Maybe because jasmine flower is too small and wouldn't have visually.
Yeah, a jasmine flower would not. Jasmine flower would not bloom, right, as much.
They usually of like a red or a pink color. Maybe if in the audience there's a like a flower expert, because I do find that you know, among our tea friends we have expert of many different fields. So if there's like a botanist or something, can take the picture and identify the flower. Do you have another picture?
Yeah, and actually we have a question from Kim. She's asking, so blooming tea is just a show, not really a tea drinking experience?
Yes, the focus is definitely not on tea. I mean, an experience is made up for many different aspects, in my opinion, right? Even in the old text, people will talk about, obviously, you know, what we're drinking is very important because that's like the central theme that kind of brought us together. But then it's your company, it's the environment, it's you know, the energy, the mood, and all that. So that all together construct an experience. However, I would definitely say that was for blooming tea, even though I cannot say, you know, it's not a full tea experience, but it's definitely lacking the sensual experience, or like, you know, the experience that we use our taste buds and our olfactory sensors. That full experience that we usually have with tea, that's definitely being compromised for these blooming teas. But visually, I guess the visual effect compensate for that. Another thing, I guess, for all of these I want to comment on is definitely the price, or the intrinsic value of these kind of things. Remember, tea is very expensive. Tea is more expensive than flowers. So I always say if you happen to like a tea that doesn't cost you much, no matter if it's flavored or not flavored, then you should feel lucky. That's a good thing. But do not, if you have reservation on your preference for the particular tea or either flavor or not flavored, and the person is using, these kind of visual effect, try to tell you the tea is worth a lot of money, things like that, then I would be very cautious about it.
So
I actually like that analogy. I actually like that analogy a lot, compared how tea is usually more expensive than flowers. So yeah, in terms of price, I think we have to be very cautious on how these blooming teas tend to be overpriced.
Yes.
I've seen certain blooming tea that was really jasmine flavored tea on the outside. And I saw that at some corporate events where they put them in champagne glasses, large champagne glasses. It's very beautiful.
Yes, that must look really pretty.
Yes, and jasmine is easy for most people to drink at first blush.
Yeah, and I can imagine, if it's either in lieu of a cocktail, pre-dinner cocktail, or when people are enjoying it with brunch outdoors in the garden, the visual effect of the flower complements with the environment that you're in. I can imagine how that really elevates one's, just the experience with time. Ultimately, experience is really our experience with time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. There's another question. Here there are trends for selling Camellia sinensis flowers price similar to like loose leaf tea. Do you understand the question?
Oh yeah, I think it's more. Maybe I feel like that's a common, not a question. Yeah.
Okay. Then,
yeah. Yes. It's definitely. I mean. So I have to say this because sometimes people do ask about jasmine flowers. So jasmine tea. So jasmine tea does have a tradition. I don't know when exactly it started, but I would say it definitely became popular or mainstream popular in China during Qing Dynasty, which is the last dynasty in China. I'm actually watching a TV drama with my mom right now. It's called The Tea House. I highly recommend it. We were watching the ones that's made after the 2000s. There are many different versions because they come from a pretty popular or pretty famous screen script. So it's usually a theater piece, but this one is moved into a whole TV show, and in there you talk about this. So all the stories evolved around this tea house and their customers. So if you're a customer of Tea Drunk, maybe one day we'll make a TV show too. So but it takes people through the end of Qing Dynasty and until to all the different political movements, the wars, and all that time, and how the people who were in association with the tea house fared. And a very popular tea at that tea house during end of Qing Dynasty was the jasmine tea. And even now you still have jasmine tea. So jasmine tea can be a traditional tea, and it's also the only flavored tea in China that in certain circumstances it can be really expensive. I haven't really been following the price of jasmine tea, but last time I checked, let's just say 3 or 4 years ago, the top grade jasmine tea would be about $500 a pound, which is really pretty much on par with premium teas, any premium tea in China. But it's capped at that though. Premium Camellia sinensis can be $500 per pound. That really only enters you into the premium Chinese tea, and the upper cap can be so much higher. And given how quickly the price rise, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like twice that amount now. But I haven't really been following. But keep in mind, not all jasmine teas are made equal though. If you see the jasmine flower in the jasmine tea, it's definitely not worth that much. The best jasmine tea is where there's no trace.
No flowers.
No flowers. Exactly.
No flowers. Yes. Yes. Great. I will share the next picture now. This is a very popular tea, I guess. Richard saw it a lot while you were living in Hong Kong, right? the
Yes.
Mandarin shoupu or shupu.
Yes.
And I actually, when I first encountered this tea, I was in Sichuan, and I really liked it. I thought it was still a flavored tea, of course, but I felt that it was really balanced between the shupu and the Mandarin, because at this point I've only tasted really, really bad shupu that people had convinced me that it needed to taste like manure. Otherwise, it was not gonna be good shupu. So I was convinced of this statement, right? So I was like, well,
like a what?
Manure, like what? Like horse poop.
Oh, okay. Well, I would call that acquired taste.
So anyways, I was convinced that this was true. So when I tried this Mandarin tea, I really liked it. I actually considered buying it and carrying some for soite, but I thought it was really expensive, and for flavor tea, I was hesitant and decided not to buy it at the end.
Yeah. So these teas definitely made its popularity only in the recent years. Now, it says sometimes in English people call it a green orange tea. I guess you can consider almost like a Chinese green citrus. The Chinese word we call it 小青柑. It got made really, really popular was this one marketing trick. So 小青柑 actually sounds kind of like 小心肝, so like my basically my sweetheart in Chinese. And people also package them into like a really cute little things, and then so it became really, really popular online. But it was only popular for a couple of years, and then it was reported repeatedly by mainstream media for the health risks these ones actually poses. And ironically, these teas, the number one selling point was about how these orange peels needs to be dried and fermented for a time being before it can be used. So it's supposed to be a time-consuming thing that offers you health benefits. But as but in the media exposure, when people tested them, it's actually full of bad bacteria and moldiness and all these kind of problem. And just like, during our session with Professor Zhou Hongjie talking about pu'er in the research that his student did, and they basically examined over 3,000 producers of pu'er, and the number one problem they found with these pu'er was actually the problem with moisture content and or the moldiness. So so since then, it became basically very unpopular in China now. And I always feel there's like the tea trend kind of have like a 1 to 2 year lag in the West. When the news came out and no longer became popular in China, it almost became slightly forbidden in China, and that's when it became popular here.
Yeah, and now it's getting a little popular in Mexico, so we'll see what happens with this Mandarin tea.
Yes, I would if you ever, if it really tastes like horse poop, or the ones I had taste extremely fishy, like if you ever had like a fish, and if you didn't clean the fish tank for a while and you decide to clean the fish tank, it has a particular smell. The ones I had range either from that to extremely herbaceous, really like a Chinese medicine kind of herbaceous, or just straight out moldy. None of those are the normal flavors you should have. And the ones that I had, even in China, they were like $15 each, which is, again, like Carolina said, it's not cheap for a flavored tea, especially given shoku, as the tea base is used is already considered a cheaper raw material. I've seen some narratives of the marketers for these teas came out, and then they all claim that a lot of price actually goes into the citrus peel. Like it's it has to be come from a specific kind of citrus, and it's very expensive and things like that. But still, I mean, it's hard to imagine a citrus can match the price point of a tea. So, but the point is, I feel like the ones I definitely have paid price for what I feel like is should be the upper end of this particular kind of product, and still they did not taste very pleasant.
Mm-hmm. I have a question from Axel. Hola, Axel, ¿cómo estás? He says, well, you can read it.
Some poor teas I have smells like Fritos or dog balls. I guess these are poor quality or processing. Do you know something about it? This is so interesting. I have 2 cats. I've had dogs before. When I was younger, it's very hard to pull that particular smell from the memory. I would assume it smelled different from cat paw. But usually, like extremely funky notes like this, I would call them being unusual, not in a good way. Yeah. There's certain notes that people might not get very comfortable with, but those are actually really good notes, such as, you know, if you smell something like a wet stone, those are precious notes in the tea. Woodsy note, but if it's very clean woodsy note, like it's not like a moldy woodsy note, it's also really good. Yeah, dog paw, I'm not sure.
Oh, cool.
But I love the note though. Oh my God, can I share with you guys a tasting note I found in some ancient tea book? I've been wanting to tell this. It's the tasting note says the tea tastes like the smell of baby flesh.
Oh
my.
That's creepy.
I know, but it's kind of true, right? Babies have a little kind of smell.
delicious.
Yeah, so we're definitely not the first generation to get really creative with these tasting notes.
Okay, so I will share the next tea.
Okay.
This is really popular. At least in Mexico, it is super popular. Jasmine pearls.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, jasmine pearls. So you guys probably have heard of a tea called gunpowder tea. And along with gunpowder tea, jasmine pearl, golden monkey, these are basically teas that Chinese people do not know about them. They're similar to pu'er tea back in the days during the dynasty time. It started and remains a exportation only tea. This has to do, you know, in China, tea has always been a very important thing for exportation. We probably know by this point from the old times, the 3 most important things Chinese export is tea, porcelain, and silk. So even from the dynasty time to the modern governments, tea had always been an essential part for exportation, and so there's always a large scale government organized activity around these. And then there were certain teas that were produced just to satisfy foreign markets, and it's not very like Chinese people basically don't know about these. Yeah. And yeah, the jasmine pearls, so as you can see, you know, the teas are rolled into these balls. Just the size of these balls alone, that you know it comes from very large tea leaves, and you can actually see the white hair on them. So which means it's not a matter of maturity of the tea leaves. So basically what I'm saying is the tea leaves are not large because they're more mature. They are large because they come from a large leaf cultivar, and the large leaf cultivar comes from warmer climate. So these all come from the basically the more massive tea production regions in China.
So you don't think these pearls are from Fujian?
Actually, I know Fujian makes them. I have, because before Fujian white tea saw its own renaissance, it had largely, for many years, it had largely relied on exporting teas. We do see that, so basically what you see is it used to be a prestige tea region, and it has seen its decline. So in the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, it's just basically making really bad tea for exportation. It also became a hub for making jasmine tea, to the point that still a lot of the best jasmine tea producers come from Fujian. However, as they see their renaissance with their historically famous tea, which is their white tea, they actually start to focus on that because, you know, it's higher price, so you don't have to make as much of the volume, so people have switched activity. And since then we start seeing jasmine tea, they still make a lot of their use their plantation teas as the raw material for jasmine tea, but jasmine tea activity actually since been moved to Guangxi, where you have large jasmine plantations, but
right.
the expertise remains with Fujian. So they actually, a lot of tea makers in Guangxi, they're actually from Fujian. So the people in Fujian, they'll just like make the tea leaves, and then they, after the season is over, they immediately go to Guangxi and then make jasmine teas with those plantation teas.
I see. So why is it that jasmine pearls tend to be quite expensive if the raw material isn't that good?
I don't know. It really shouldn't be, because this is, again, jasmine tea is not a tea that, just as a tea, I wouldn't say it's not a traditional tea. It's definitely, even though it's traditional, but it still is not you can say cocktail is traditional, right? But it is not, it's not any pure liquor or wine. So same thing, jasmine tea still is a reprocessed tea. It's not one of the 6 categories of teas. And the jasmine teas that Chinese drink is not like the jasmine pearl.
Okay.
Yeah, but for among exportation teas, because exportation teas, some of them can be really bad. So among the exportation teas is actually do consider a better exportation teas, but it really shouldn't be very expensive. Also, expensive is kind of relative. Well, how expensive are you talking about? You can give me an idea.
Yeah, around $20 for 50 grams.
Yeah, that's kind of expensive for what it is, because it's mostly about, in a way, about opportunity cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in actual real money sense, that you, for the same amount of money, yeah, you might be able to purchase something else. But
yeah.
Okay,
this picture was sent to me from Seth. So I don't know if you wanna introduce this tea, Seth.
Okay, yeah. So this is actually, I wanted to talk about the how packaging can be used sometimes to sell tea that isn't particularly good. This tea is from Laos. I picked it up when I was in Vientiane, and the tea itself was not good, but they used kind of a, I don't know, this gimmicky kind of packaging to make it more attractive as a purchasing point. And you see in a lot of places in Southeast Asia, they'll use this kind of, I guess, marketing strategy where they have like really attractive packaging, but the tea itself is not particularly good.
do you have a picture of the inside that we can take a look at what it looks like?
I actually have the package here you can take a look at.
Oh, so it's
just
not
like,
even,
yeah.
oh, I see. I thought it was like a lancha, the Chinese black tea from Luang area, where you pack the tea in a bamboo basket and.
No, it's just like a little rice carrier, but they stuff
okay.
the tea bags in it.
Oh, yes, yeah, I recognize those in the Thai restaurant. Oh, I see. And it's just, is it loose or?
This one is just tea bags, actually. So it's like, I think they used fannings. It was really kind of like powdery type tea.
Right.
Blended with ginger. So it's not like particularly good, but when you put an organic label on the tag and then fancy packaging, it's easy to get people to pick it up.
Right. Yeah. It's also hard to know if it's, you know, like the organic is like how organic can Fannings be?
Right, exactly.
That is a good point. Do you want to explain what fannings are, just for people who don't know what fannings are?
Yeah, I mean, in a tea industry sense, it's a particular grade of tea, and it's basically the leaves and then got broken. That's what you usually see in the back tea. There's sometimes it's just people would just use the acronym like the FPF and things like that. But I would say if you're drinking more of like fine teas, Fanny's really is just the byproduct tea. It's not, even though it's part of the industrial tea's official grading system, but for people who actually produce tea, I wouldn't consider that actually tea. It's really the byproduct of tea.
Great. Also, we have a really long comment by Lynn Benson. I don't know if you want to read it, Richard, or someone else want to read it or comment about it.
Yeah. Richard, would you like to read it?
Some poor teas. Nope, that's not it. I don't see
under chat.
Under chat. I have learned that jasmine tea is made in several different ways. Many of the lower end jasmine to use are made with essential oils. Is the flavoring. Leaves over the balls with them and sit overnight. Then cleared in the morning and do it again for the next night. I am forgetting now how many times he did this process, but in the end, when you purchase this jasmine tea, there are no flowers in it, and my customers off and said this is the best jasmine tea they ever had.
Yes, so this is very much true. If we had to list the hierarchy for jasmine tea, so basically the very bottom line is you have a jasmine tea with a flavoring spray. And on top of that, you have a jasmine tea with organic and all natural spray. And then on top of that, you have jasmine tea that's actually made with fresh jasmine flowers. By the way, jasmine tea is actually one of the first teas I made when I was a kid. Because my grandma had a lot of jasmine flowers, and I used to take my dad's tea and make them into jasmine tea. And then he got really pissed because it was actually really good and expensive tea. But I didn't know. I just wanted to experiment with it. So basically what you do is the tea will actually extract all the moisture out from jasmine tea. So jasmine with tea together, jasmine will eventually dehydrate and become this really ugly looking thing. And then you pick them out and then you repeat this process. So the jasmine tea made with fresh jasmine flowers, they are graded basically just based on how many times you have repeated this process. The highest grade is nice, so it's they call it so this process it's this mixing process. Sometimes people translate it as like a stamping or printing process. And it's very tedious. There's a lot of labor goes into there because you have to mix the flour with the tea and you have to take all the flowers out and then do this again. So the very common jasmine flowers that we see in the market, or I know there are a couple of old jasmine tea brands in China, the ones that is very popular with their longtime customers are the ones that's done this 4 times. So that's probably the most common version that you'll find. But the ones I was talking about is really expensive. Those would be.
I'm getting unstable because of all the broadband.
The recent years, I have actually heard that there are people who would do this with 12 times, which I haven't tried before. I have only tried the ones with 9 times. But yes, you're looking for a jasmine tea. Basically does not have any taste of tea. That's very important. It should only taste. So the best jasmine tea is basically you are using tea as a vessel to absorb all the flavors from the flower. Sometimes people will even sprinkle water and then bake the tea and flour dry together to facilitate this kind of absorption process. And second is there should be no flowers at all. Yeah.
No flowers.
Yeah, because if you have the flowers in, that means you have a step that hasn't been finished.
Mm-hmm. Great. So let's share the white cake.
Yes. So what would you like to say about this, Carolina?
Well, I was walking around Guishanti Expo last year. And then, well, I don't know if it's because I was one of the only foreigners there, but this group of people followed me and they took me to their booth and told me that this tea was a tribute tea from, I don't know, at least 50 years old. And they gifted to me. So at least I didn't pay for it.
Okay.
But it's the only information that I have. And also it's supposed to be from Fuan.
Okay.
Fujian, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. So this is like a grand example. I mean, even the story with it is the very typical like I'll tell you whatever, and now that the tea is no longer this crappy tea as it is that we see in the picture. So I've seen, so this is actually a picture that we posted our Instagram, and through the emails and the comments we receive, a lot of people identify this as the huangpian. So basically the elastic and more mature white tea that you sort it out from the making process. So many people identify as a huangpian of white tea. In fact, though, this is, I wouldn't even call it a huangpian. This really looks like a sweep up of multiple grades of multiple kinds of teas. So so I want to first explain what huangpian is, because there's so many things that's not even huangpian. So huangpian is when you pick the tea, you know, you can't just like take a very close look at each shoot and be like, okay, now I'm gonna do evaluation of what's pickable and what's not pickable, and then go pick. When we pick the tea, just do it really fast. So it's unavoidable. You're gonna pick some like the leaves that's a little bit more mature and things like that. And these tea leaves usually will have a discoloration because it has a less tendency to ferment, to change color, because it has less substance in them. And they also have less elasticity. And then during the sorting process, you pick them out. However, there are certain teas that just intentionally just went and then just chop off all the mature tea leaves. And those are not huangpian, because it's not a byproduct when you're producing the main tea. It was just a random harvest. And it was not barely even a harvest. And the reason I say this looks like a sweep up of so many different kinds, because huangpian also has a level of consistency. This one does not have any color consistency. You see some of the whiter color, some of the yellowish color, and you see some really dark color, means that part has oxidized, and it looks like it comes from multiple batches, from multiple parts of the tea, and just really look like I don't know if you guys have been to like a tea making facility, but they always have these piles of the byproduct of tea from multiple batches, and all everything was just like piled up there. I feel like it was just from that pile. Like it literally was just like whatever it got swept up from the floor of the making facility and then press them into teas. And 50 years ago, there was definitely not a tribute teas. It was, I don't know what, I mean, the Qing Dynasty, ended in 1911. I don't know when it was the last tribute tea, but it should not be after 1911. And then another thing is Fuan is Fuan is never, a historically famous tea location. Fuan actually always been the location, the hub that's closest to Fuding, where it produced the knockoff tea of Fuding. So Fuan will also not be the location. If there is a tribute tea, it will not be from Fuan either.
So are there actually white teas that can be pressed and taste good, or all white teas that are pressed into cakes tend to be not very good?
Well, so white tea does not have a tradition of being pressed at all. This is definitely a very new trend, and it started actually after the founding of Tea Trunk, which was in 2013. Now, and it's a evolving trend. As of last time that I was in tea country, which was last year, because this year we have the pandemic, and there's absolutely no good quality white tea ever get pressed into cakes. Every single producer or farmer, they will only press their white tea if they could not sell right away to that year to the top pickers. So basically, and also this is just in general in China how the tea supply chain goes as well. So you have this function called tea boss, and sometimes they call me a tea boss. Right? So tea boss actually traditionally is a job that's or like a kind of people that it's somebody from the village and who has like made it, you know, because a lot of villagers don't really have connections even with the people in the township and stuff like that. So this is a villager who had a little greater connection. So the tea boss would basically go to the tea region and take the tea from the farmers, from the villagers to the township. And almost every single major tea that you can think of has this trading hub, and it's usually not super far from the production region. It's usually in the nearby township. You know, so for example, Pu'er was a trading hub. You know, if for Guaping, you know, Xianhualing would be a trading hub, and for Fuding, you know, Diantou would be a trading hub. So in this trading hub, they have the tea market, and the tea boss basically, the tea boss will have their own, you know, private connections and stuff. So and then they take so whatever that didn't go to their top buyers will just then take to the tea market, and then it'll be for open selection. And the teas that come from tea market and then get carried over to the tea market in the cities. So every major city in China also have a tea market, and that's another trading hub. And then from those tea markets, and then the tea gets wholesaled to whoever wholesale, you know, buyers of the tea, and then they then sell the tea to like tea houses and then to end consumers and things like that. So with each step, you have a selection or filtering process. So basically, by the time it reaches the city's wholesale market or the city's tea market, the tea has already gone through many different levels of selection. So it depends on where you actually get your tea. That's already, you know, that who has already seen the tea and then filter it out. In the recent years, given the higher mobility that people have, we do start seeing them sometimes, you know, a producer, if they have a very extensive family and then they decide to pool their resources together, they do have the ability to actually take their tea from their, you know, family tea farm and then all the way to the city's tea market. But the thing is that the city's tea market is so vast, you know, they call it the tea cities. It's not for no reason. It'll take you, I would say, not even days, probably like a few weeks to go through them all. So it'll be very difficult to you know, find the actual ones that you have tested and then know they're legit and all this stuff. So for white tea, basically, the tea would have gone through so many rounds of selections already before it was deemed to, you know, not being desired to be sold loose, and then it got pressed. So pressed white tea is basically already been, like, the top buyers have already selected the teas.
Yeah. Pressed white tea is like the fannings of black tea.
Not necessarily that bad, but you know, white tea has a major problem of overproduction. You know how major the overproduction is. Now there's simply not enough space in the general fooding area to even to store all these over the years, all these surplus of white tea. So you can either choose to have your surplus tea to be made into black tea, which is very popular now too. Or in fooding, there are actually many companies that offer storage service And they also offer some kind of commodity trading of these teas that you hold in their storage as well. Just because there's just so much surplus of white teas now. So pressing white tea is also, well, initially pressing white tea was probably trying to piggyback on the upper trend of pu'er. However, later it just it really became a necessity for storage.
I see. Yeah, of course, because it takes less space. Okay, so the next tea is becoming really popular in Mexico. I don't know the rest of Latin America, but it's the one I first sent you.